Yeah, it's a good question, Glenn. I got to say, watching that game in March 16th, 2018, I started to get the sense that this was this was one of the greatest upsets I'd ever seen in my life. And I would say probably 6 months after that historic game, UMBC 16 seed knocking off a 1 seed in mighty Virginia, number 1 overall. I started to put the project together. So it pretty quickly. I mean, look, to me, this was one of the greatest upsets of my time, and one of the greatest underdog stories ever. So it just seemed like a natural, and the more I got into it, guys, there were more sub stories to the whole thing. Obviously the pivot point of the book is the upset of Virginia.
Yep.
Here's a team, number 16 seeds had never beaten a 1 seed in 135 times. So that was obviously the focus for the book. But the more I got into it, there was more and more stuff that was interesting, and I knew it was enough for a book.
The most powerful to look, selfishly, there's other things that I care about, and we'll talk about those in a second. But I think the most powerful stuff in the book, and I'm sure you agree, is Ryan Odom so openly talking directly about everything that his son Connor was going through, and really almost. And we all knew about it. Like, it's not like they've ever hidden from what was going on with Connor. They would talk about it. They did interviews about it. But to really juxtapose the timeline, the way that you did, of what the Odoms were going through with him trying to build a program, it's unfair to say from nothing, but damn near nothing at UMBC. It's really wild to read about that juxtaposition of everything going on at the same time.
Yeah, it was something, Glenn, that most people didn't know about outside of the program. So here you have this wonderful time, this wonderful time for the school where the number 16 seed knocks off a number 1 seed. For that weekend, everywhere you turned, UMBC basketball was a focus. If you went on social media, they were all over Sports Center, every newspaper. They were even featured overseas in Europe, in the countries in Europe. And yet behind the scenes, as great as that was for the program, behind the scenes, Ryan and Lucia Odom were dealing with their son's obsessive compulsive disorder. So it was a tough time. Connor Odom was doing a little bit better during that weekend in Charlotte, when of course they beat Virginia and they ultimately lost to Kansas State. He was doing a little bit better. He had been released out of a rehab program for about 6 months, but still, lurking in the background for this poor family was the fact that, hey, is our son going to be okay? So a tough time for the Odoms. Obviously a great time for the school, a great time for Ryan personally as a coach and at the pinnacle of his career. But behind the scenes, the family was definitely struggling with this.
And Kevin, I really think it speaks to, and again, something that you referenced, we all know how kind of stoic Ryan Odom was through all of this, right? And I wish I could remember the name of do you remember the famous, when Hampton beat Iowa State, and their coach at the time goes running and like parading and is lifted up.
Smith, right?
No, that was Georgia State is who you're thinking of. And it was R.J. Hunter that's who it was. And I wish I could remember his name, but we remember this iconic video of him racing all over the floor after Hampton as a 15 seed knocks off Iowa State, right? And we didn't get that from Ryan Odom. We got such stoicism, like we just almost nonplussed by the entire thing. And I really think that context really kind of helps explain what was going on. Like, yeah, this is a massive deal and it's incredible, but there is a lot happening in his life in this moment. Like, it is so much more than just winning a basketball game.
Yeah, but Glenn, the only thing I would say about that is that's Ryan's demeanor,
and that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
I'm not sure that in that moment, that celebratory moment right after the Virginia win, that he was going to go crazy. That's not his style.
Sure.
Ryan Odom is super chill. He's laid back. He's just he is totally, in control of his emotions all the time. I think that was just him. And if you saw that post-game interview with Tracy Wolfson, when Tracy Wolfson is talking to the players, but she's also talking to Ryan Odom. Not until Tracy Wolfson brought up Ryan Odom's dad, Dave Odom, of course, a famous coach from many years ago. Not until then did Ryan crack a real smile. So it's just his nature. That's just the way he is. He's pretty buttoned down, very open guy, but just buttoned down in terms of letting his emotions out.
He is Kevin Cowherd. The book is You Must Be Cinderella. I'm going to try to show you the image of the front cover if I can. I don't know if that's coming across or not, but you can pick it up right now. Or it's available. Is it in stores at all, Kevin, or should we just guide people to Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, places like that?
Well, it should be in any stores that are open, but yeah, order it on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and any other online or in-store booksellers.
And we're going to link that up as well on our Twitter account at Glenn Clark Radio for you to find it. Kevin, I think the other, kind of most powerful part of the book to me, and I tell you this as someone who was once upon a time a student at UMBC, and I remember my first week there, Dr. Rabowski was just out, and this is 2001. This would have been, I want to say, like just before 9/11, maybe the days before 9/11. I'm walking around campus, and Dr. Rabowski is just out walking around, walking up to everyone he can, shaking hands, asking about them, tell me about who you are, why you're here. And the more that I was there, the more I understood he was just such a special person. And this is 20 years ago that I'm talking about, Kevin. Knowing now more about Dr. Rabowski that I didn't know then and still didn't know until I read your book, he's an unbelievable human being. I mean, he's one of the most incredible human beings that I could have imagined coming across in our community. How much did you know about his story before you started the book? And is there more that, you almost would have liked to have done a Dr. Rabowski book, because there's probably still more that you didn't cover just because you're trying to write about a basketball topic too?
Yeah, no, he's an incredible academic, as you know. He is a rock star among academics nationally. I mean, you go to any school, talk to the president of any school, and they'll tell you they know Freeman Rabowski. He was absolutely great for me to work with. Glenn, there was a lot of parts of his growing up story that I didn't know. One of the things that I think people now know about Freeman was that, he grew up in segregated Birmingham, Alabama in the 60s. And he, as a 12-year-old, he marched in the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's Children's Crusade. And that was a tough time to be a kid marching in a civil rights demonstration. He was ultimately arrested, spent days in jail as a 12-year-old.
It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. So, from that beginning, a beginning that could have been traumatic, he rose, to become one of the foremost academics in the country. And what he's done at UMBC is unbelievable. You seeing him walking around and shooting the breeze with students, that's Freeman.
Yep.
And what he's brought to that campus, particularly in terms of welcoming African-American students, students from overseas, what he's done there is such a nurturing environment. And as you know, from having attended there, that's a really competitive school. That is a school that prizes academics above all else. So even the great win by the basketball program, this wasn't suddenly going to become a jock school.
Right. And
UMBC is still UMBC.
And you covered that so well, obviously, in the reaction around campus and everything like that after the win. Kevin Cowherd is with us. You Must Be Cinderella is the book. So selfishly, what made me the happiest in reading the book, I'm a little bit mad at you because you said local sports talk host instead of using my name, but I'll forgive you at some point. Our friend Nick Kelly, who has been a part of what we do for a really long time. He is one of my favorites. He was P1 that became a friend over the years, and he and his wife Laura and Kevin, I don't even know. Do you know their story at all? He was certainly a big part of the book. Do you know what they had been through in the years leading up to this?
No, I didn't. And I still don't.
So Kevin, they lost their house in a fire, within a couple years before this happening. And, everybody's okay. They lost their stuff, but, they'll tell you it's totally fine. nobody was hurt, their animals weren't hurt, like stuff can be replaced. But I know what they went through, and I know Nick Kelly cares about UMBC more than any human being that I've ever met, right? Like maybe outside of Dr. Rabowski. And I know that it's got to tickle him, and I've talked to him already, to have been a part of the definitive book about UMBC. I don't know anyone that cares more about this, and so I want to thank you, first of all, because I know how much it means to Nick that he was a part of it. But can you take me through the stories that you wanted to tell, the people that you wanted to talk to? And what really compelled me was that you covered that this isn't like another place that might be basketball obsessed that went through something like this. That part of the story is that there isn't the same amount of people, that there were genuine people that had no idea what to do in order to celebrate UMBC winning a basketball game.
Yeah, it's amazing to talk to the students, to go back and talk to them about that night. First of all, nobody on campus expected UMBC to win,
not.
obviously. Yes. So they were totally taken by surprise. The game, as you know, was a 9:40 tip-off, so it ends close to midnight. And all of a sudden, you got the few students who are still on campus bursting out of their dorm rooms, throwing the remotes down, bursting out of the dorm rooms and trying to celebrate. Except, guess what? They didn't know what to do.
Right.
They've never been in this situation.
Correct.
This isn't a sports school. This isn't Maryland where you're going to start burning couches on Route 1. You're going to start, pulling down lampposts. So that was to me a cute story, but also a telling story, Glenn, because it told you about the culture of the school. Even the next day, you mentioned Nick Kelly and his wife Laura. Even the next day, when Nick Kelly went back to campus, he wanted to buy I guess he wanted to buy something from the bookstore.
Right.
Even then, there was no celebrating going on.
Correct.
It was nothing. And by the way, that was March 17th. The next day, that was St. Patrick's Day. And there wasn't even like this sense of, oh man, this is going to be a really cool St. Patrick's Day. Look what our basketball team did. There was none of that. It's just a different environment, as you know, especially vis-a-vis sports.
Yeah, and in fairness, obviously, it was spring break as well, on top of everything else,
exactly.
Which certainly had a factor in that.
Exactly.
But seriously, I hope you know how much it means to me that you included. It's a nerdy thing, right? But like one day, down the road, Nick Kelly's gonna be able to pick up a book definitively about his favorite team winning a basketball game, and there's his name on it. It means a lot to me, because he is a wonderful human being who's done a lot for our community.
Well, he was great to deal with. I'll tell you that. He was wonderful. As you might have seen from I think you saw it from the PDF file that I sent you. There's a picture of him and his wife kissing the True Grit statue. Wonderful picture with their dog. So he was a terrific guy to work with. And I didn't know you guys were that friendly, but that's wonderful.
We were going to, literally the day of the America East Championship game, he messaged me, he said, look, if somehow they pull this off, I'm going over and I'm kissing the dog. That's what I'm going to go do. And then, once it worked, you got to go back and do it again, obviously. That's the way that it goes.
Absolutely. You can't break the streak.
So I do have to give you a lot of credit, Kevin. My favorite thing in the book, you somehow managed to work the phrase fabled anal phenomenon into a book about UMBC winning a basketball game. Also managed to work the phrase caress his ample rump into a book about UMBC basketball. I want to give you credit for both of those, and I'll just let people find out how it is that those phrases worked into a basketball story.
I appreciate the tease.
Yeah, I don't think we need to talk about him any further. I don't think we need to give any context. I think we can just toss that out there, and you can go find out on your own by picking up You Must Be Cinderella. The other side of it was interesting to me, Kevin, that you told the Virginia side of the story, but not as far as going to trying to, and maybe you did, and it just didn't work out. I wanted to get you to take me through that. How far did you want to go on that side of it? Being it's a UMBC book, but it is built around one particular basketball game, and there is the other side of the game. Did you want to try to talk to the players and coaches from that side, or how did you handle wanting it to be about UMBC specifically versus knowing there's a Virginia side to the story as well?
Well, door number 2 in your explanation there. This was definitely a UMBC book. It was going to be told from the perspective of the players, the coaches, the students, the faculty, the administration. But there was a Virginia component to it too, obviously. I thought the way that Tony Bennett handled that post-game press conference after this devastating loss to UMBC was one of the classiest things I've ever seen, Glenn. I thought that was absolutely so. Obviously, I was going to include parts of the Virginia story in there. But again, this was a UMBC-centric book. And that's the way it was always going to be. And look what happened to, while we're on the subject.
And that to me is what makes the story so cool, Kevin, right? Like there were so many of us that were rooting for Virginia the following year to win the national championship.
Absolutely.
Because of what they had been. In a way, it adds something to the story of UMBC's win, right? Like this was not a fluke. This was the best team, and they beat them. Emphatically they beat them, right? Like it is. Yeah. I do think it gave even more, almost another chapter to the greatness of this story that Virginia turned around and won the title a year later.
Yeah, and Tony Bennett, the Virginia coach, the whole time after winning the national championship, he credited the game that the Cavaliers played against UMBC as the impetus to start another season. Hey, this was a devastating loss, but we started another season. We're going to put this in our rearview mirror. We're going to learn from it, but we're going to put it in the rearview mirror, and we're going to just do the best we can. Ultimately, that led to the national championship. So, from adversity, right? The old saying, from adversity can come greatness, and that's what happened with Virginia.
Kevin, your favorite thing that you learned that you did not know at all about going into writing this book, the favorite thing that you learned from all the conversations you had with players, coaches, Zach Seidel, Steve Levy, all of these people, the favorite thing that you learned in the process, whether it made the book or not?
No, easy question for me to answer. And I'll tell you what it was the incredible confidence that those UMBC players had going into that Virginia game. I talked to everybody from Ryan Odom, everybody on this coaching staff, all the players, and I expected people to say, we were pretty jittery. We were pretty nervous taking the court against UMBC. No. These guys were supremely confident. Not only that, they were supremely relaxed in the hours and the minutes before that game started. So that was what really surprised me. I expected one player to say, here we are at the Spectrum Center, the home of the Charlotte Hornets, 20,000 people. Well, less than that, but the capacity of the building held 20,000 people. It was the biggest stadium they'd ever played in. I thought they'd be rattled at least somewhat about this, and they weren't. They were totally confident. They knew that they had a team. If they played their best, they could beat this team. And that was something that surprised me. Not one player, not one coach said there was any doubt in the players' minds that they could pull this kind of an upset.
I did think there was a lot of interesting, a lot of people, will allow history. This was such a monumental moment that will allow history to forget that they were very much in position to be able to beat Kansas State 2 days later. And you covered a lot of that. And for example, I had sort of, maybe I had heard about it but forgotten about it. I think we all knew there were going to be distractions, but almost overwhelming how many distractions they had to deal with in the build up to that game, and what could have been as a story. As remember, they were in the same bracket as Loyola Chicago, right? Like what right. As good of the story as it already was, what could have been and how close they were to being able to pull that off in the second round. I think it's fascinating to relive some of that and some of what they had to deal with between the Virginia game and the Kansas State game.
Yeah, you have to remember what it was like back then. Again, they dominated headlines everywhere after that Virginia game. And so for 48 hours, these guys were here. The hype and the hoopla was incredible. These guys are watching themselves till 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning on SportsCenter. They're all over social media. They're texting their buddies back and forth. Really hard to go from that tremendous high of beating Virginia, and now you got to prepare for Kansas State. Kansas State was a terrific team, Glenn, as you I think alluded to.
Yep.
This was a Big 12 team. The Big 12 at that time was considered that year anyway, considered the toughest conference in basketball. Kansas State was really a good team. Everybody on UMBC knew that Kansas State was going to be probably a better defensive team than Virginia. Certainly, they were going to be more athletic than the Cavaliers were. So, but you had had to get back. You had to leave the hype and the hoopla of beating Virginia behind, and you had to focus on this next upcoming game. And that was very hard for those players to do. They ultimately did it, and they played a terrific game against Kansas State. Kansas State just played a better game. Here's the other thing. Ryan Odom said, we're not a team that plays teams of the quality of Virginia and Kansas State back to back.
Right.
We're from the America East Conference. All right. So we'll play, we'll play SMU in preseason. We'll play a Baylor in the preseason. But then we get back to our schedule. Here, these Power 5 teams, as you know, Glenn, every night you're playing a tough team in your conference. And that's not the kind of thing that the UMBC players were used to. So to have them, come back like, less than 48 hours later and pull off another monumental upset, I think that was almost too much to hope for.
And throwing, like, I had forgotten all about the shoes, and I won't give anything more away, but like I'd forgotten all about that and the factor that can be for a basketball team. I'll let you guys read about that, and You Must Be Cinderella. Kevin, before I finish, I think that there's a question that is constantly asked, which is, why is Ryan Odom still here? And it's asked on two fronts, right? Why hasn't a program swept in and plucked him away? And the truth is that a couple programs have tried, right? We know Virginia Tech tried. We know other people have tried. The flip side is, well, then why did Ryan Odom stay? And the best answer that we get is, well, he's happy, right? Like, he loves living in Annapolis. He's very happy here. Do you have, after doing a book like this, any more of a sense for Ryan Odom and his goals and how long? Here they are on the cusp, but they just won the regular season again in the America East. We'll see if they get in. If they do, they probably won't be a 16 seed this time. But do you have more of a sense of Ryan Odom, his future at UMBC, and that question that for outsiders kind of makes no sense? Why would someone who's so likable, such a good coach, got so much national attention, why would he still be at UMBC here 3 years later?
It's a tough question. I'll tell you this. Ryan absolutely loves being at UMBC from what I can see. Absolutely loves coaching in that kind of environment. But lots of other people, Glenn, have told me that this guy has aspirations that go beyond UMBC. He's young enough. He's putting together the kind of record that will allow him to move up to the next level, whatever that level is. But he doesn't talk about that. He certainly did not talk to me about that. So I don't have any particular insight in that sense. But I can tell you, the guy is going to be highly sought after.
No question.
He's highly sought after now. He was certainly highly sought after that 2018 season. But I think he just loves it there right now. He's happy. His family is happy, as you said, living in Annapolis. So I think for right now, he's more than content to be where he is.
You Must Be Cinderella is the book. It is available right now. We've linked it up at Glenn Clark Radio on Twitter, and you can go to barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. I normally we would be like plugging signings that you're doing. I guess that doesn't happen in 2021, does it?
Not happening. Tough time to roll out a book.
Yeah. Difficult.
Everything's virtual.
Are you doing like a virtual event at all that we can plug or something along those lines? Is there anything like that we can plug for you?
Nope. Thanks. Local TV and radio is what I'm doing, at least initially. Again, you can't. In-store signings are out for right now. So I'll keep you posted if anything else happens. But no. Right now, we're it's local TV and radio, and I'm content with that. This was we all knew it was a tough time to roll out a new book, but we wanted to get it done before the next NCAA tournament, before some other 16 seed.
Yeah, sure.
Off one seed.
Right.
So
you can't let that happen.
It was a marketing decision, kind of.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. There's no doubt about it. You Must Be Cinderella, Kevin. I can't. I really enjoyed the book. You did a really great job with it, and particularly when it's a topic that everybody kind of knows about, right? Like you're writing about something that just happened recently. Everybody knows about it. And yet you did a really great job of diving in and finding stories and unique things that maybe people weren't aware of. So I really enjoyed the read. Appreciate you taking the time for us this morning, as always. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate the kind words. Always great to talk with you, Glenn.